All right, so hello there, and I am going to go over the Better 3 conversion website strategy. So I'll give you a little bit of background on this particular strategy. So there were two big things that really impacted how I run my solopreneur business from the standpoint of one being converting my services into actual products, and then the other being using StoryBrand, Donald Miller's StoryBrand, models and framework in actually compiling websites. So one of the problems that I noticed a lot of my solopreneur clients were having was that they were their sites were basically just brochureware, or it was all about them and not about their clients, etc. So I cover a lot of that in other training. And I also have another snack size workshop where I go over the actual conversion website breakdown because I pulled it right from Donald Miller's framework. And so I will be going over that. I've made some minor modifications, and depending on the client I've had, I do different things as far as executing the way their content's laid out. But I will go over real fast a high level of why this page is laid out the way it is. And then the other workshop, you'll be able to actually get into, much deeper into what those components are. I find that this is a really good framework to use for, any type of high touch relationship. And so it's not necessarily transactional. And I'm very much relationship focused in sales and customer experience. So I'm all about really understanding the experience that clients are having and meeting them where they're at. So the conversion website really, really does that. The reason why I named it the conversion website is because it's designed to convert. So with the devices that are in this site, for example, it doesn't have navigation, right? So there's a couple of things where you take basically a brochureware site and a sales page, which would normally be about getting people just to read through a lot of copy, maybe watch a video, and take one strong action. And that is the blend, the hybrid of both of these types of website approaches. One is like taking all the information, putting it in story form, so you're all talking about your clients, and then the other is making it very specific, the action you want them to take. So that's really what this is all laid out. And many of my clients didn't understand where it fit in the grand scheme of things. So I created this diagram to kind of show the flow, similar to a marketing funnel, of where it sits in the marketing process and also how it works with inbound marketing and advertising. So I'm going to go over this really quick here with you. So basically where we want to do is we want to start with where your traffic comes from. Okay, and when we start with where the traffic comes from, that's what's going to go to your conversion website. Now, remember, there are other things that people can go to. You may have landing pages, you may have other things that you're sending them to, but for all intents and purposes, this is the basic flow of getting traffic to your site. So the first and most important, which I am a huge advocate of, is inbound marketing. And that's when you're creating such valuable content, regardless of the channel or medium, it's driving traffic to take an action of taking the next step with you and making your brand more aware in your cold prospects' eyes. So this is all about exposure and just building your authority. There's so many wonderful things that come out of this particular thing. The next thing is, which obviously during COVID we weren't really able to do a lot of this in-person stuff, but when we do and as we return to in-person, this is another avenue that will drive traffic to this. If you're on stage, you give a presentation and you say you can learn more by going to mysite.com, and there they go. And if you want to create a special landing page, then you can do that as well. Following this model on landing pages actually works really well too. And then of course you've got your outbound sales, and this is for a lot of my like concierge coaching, like executive coaching clients, the consultants that are going in for a corporate buy. They're obviously doing some outbound sales work using their CRM to nurture and have conversations about doing work and having an creating an engagement. So these are mainly the three ways that don't necessarily cost money, other than just an investment in time. Now, this last one down here, and the reason why I have this demarcation line is because this is paid. So this is where you come in and you get involved in spending some money, which is, Facebook, LinkedIn advertising, sponsorships. There's a ton of different ways you can advertise to drive traffic. And this is where the landing page comes in, where it's very much specific to whatever that paid ad is or the sponsorship is about. So it's very specific, very contextual, and is guiding that prospect to the next logical step of jumping on that offer. So I'm not going to go into this too much because this basically ties in with the advertising workshops that are in the Marketing Resource Locker. So now let's go and talk about the website. So this is your conversion website. Now, many of my clients come to me, they've already got a website, and obviously their website isn't working, otherwise they wouldn't come to me. I often call websites a gateway drug for people to come in and start working with me, because that's where they usually have the biggest breakdowns, is in their website's ability to actually create authority, drive traffic, make conversions happen. So conversion websites are very much a solution to that, and they also simplify life for my clients. So you're going to love having a conversion website. Now, I'll just go through this super quick, but I go into more detail in another workshop, and I'll link to it here on this particular one. So the primary headline and message, this is all about getting your message right. And I can't stress enough how important this is to build a message that is very specific to the audience you're working with and about the problem you solve. There's no need for catchiness. There's no need for, all this blah, blah, blah. You need to really state perfectly clearly what it is you do and who you do it for. All right, so that's the most important thing. The next section, and these are all basically sections, each one of these. Loss aversion is when you go into copy or a video and you're basically acquainting the client with, if they don't take action, their problem's only going to get worse, right? So that you want to make them feel that, kind of creating a sense of urgency, and you do that through copy, and this is the part of the storytelling that I cover in the other workshop. Guide positioning, if you're following the story brand model, positioning yourself as the guide as opposed to the hero is much more powerful way to draw people in. And the story model is that your customer or client is always the hero. So this is where you basically say, hey, I'm here to guide you. Here's my expertise. This is why I'm so awesome at this. And that's where you may link to an about page, which is a separate part of your website. Products, this is where all of your products are, your services, the things you provide and put together. And that, of course, links to another page or series of pages that go into much greater depth about what those are. Each one of those pages should also follow this model. So it's a really strong model. And the plan is all about the steps that people take to work with you. Step 1, we meet and have a consult. Step 2, I put together a strategy for you. Step 3, we talk about moving together and we get into an engagement, or whatever the process is. You always want to give them an idea, and this is about managing expectations about what that, how do we, what's the next step? This all sounds great. I'm interested. You got me. What do I do now? What can I expect? And then explanatory copy, this is where you just go into much more detail, right? You want to cover a lot of aspects about why it's important to solve the problem in the way you do. You're drawing distinctions here. You're talking about your products. You may give some examples. And that's basically following the story brand framework there. A lead generator, this is where you start building your list, right? So in the lead generator, which Donald Miller also calls the transitional call to action, which is basically if people aren't ready to pull the trigger and work with you, which is where they would, pick this direct call to action, right? And that's when they schedule a consult or book something or buy something. That's a direct call to action. That's what that is up there. And then down here, if they're not quite ready, if they're tire kicking, if they're just coming to know you, they may want to opt into your freebie. And your freebie is the next step. I'll cover that in a second. And then junk drawer, this is what Donald Miller calls basically the footer of your website. So all of that navigation that would normally be up here, you basically only have one button that sends them to the direct call to action, or the transitional, which is usually a pop-up, says sign up for my newsletter or download this ebook or whatever that freebie is. And then the junk drawer carries all of the other links. So your about page, product page, if you have a blog, if you have a link to social media, you can do that. So that's where all that junk is, basically down the bottom, because you want people to be very focused on the goal, which is either scheduling a consult or doing a download so you get their name on your list. And then I already covered this for the advertising. The next part is the automated nurturing email sequences. So let's say this transitional call to action here is an ebook, right? So you send them that ebook PDF once they opt in, and then you follow up with emails that nurture that relationship. What I usually advise is that you deepen the value that was provided in the ebook. So for example, if you have like the 10 steps you need to take in order to, XYZ, right? Well, you may cover 2 of those steps in 5 emails. So, okay, in addition to that, like give them steps or additional information, you may run into this when you do this, and here's the thing with lead magnets, you have to provide some sort of big win for your prospect. So you really want to give away a really valuable freebie. And that way they get not only a sample that your expertise, but you also can provide them a solution, like they can actually get a result out of doing it. And this email series helps you deepen that permanence of that result. So once they're done this series, and usually they're like a day or 2 apart, right? So they get this pretty much right away. And there's a lot of different ways you can deliver your freebie and then get them into another kind of vehicle. And after that, you can say, like in the final email, to continue our relationship, I'm going to be sending you my weekly email newsletter. Obviously, you don't want to use that terminology like newsletter. I can't stand that. But for this instruction, I just wanted to share that. And then you basically bring them into your list, and then you do content marketing emails. And so each one of these has more value, more information. They're getting to know you better. And each one invites them to take advantage of the true call to action, which would be a proposal, a demo, samples. Can also lead to paid engagements like, okay, I'm ready to hire you. If they want to subscribe to something you're selling as a subscription product, you can also use it as, asking for referrals. Hey, do you know anybody that needs my services, kind of thing. So all of these are the end game of what you're trying to accomplish. So as you can see, when you start with all of this traffic generating to your conversion website, a website that's much more focused on getting people to the next step, whether they're downloading the ebook or whether they're going right here and scheduling a consult, at the end of the day, this is the end result because this means money, right? So that is the conversion website strategy, which is a very basic, straightforward marketing approach that involves a website, an email series, building your list, and having a place to drive your inbound marketing content to. So there you go.